This podcast is solely for the attention of institutional, professional, qualified, or sophisticated investors and distributors.
Hi everyone, welcome to this new edition of 5 Minutes to Know Your Way Around, where we're going to talk about the ECB Governing Council of April 2022. Before starting, let's recall the context that prevailed at the time of this council. In the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the price of energy has remained very high in Europe, for gasoline, for natural gas or for electricity, and inflation in the Eurozone reached a new high in March since the creation of the zone, at plus 7.5% year-on-year for headline inflation, and plus 3% for underlying inflation. In the meantime, there are more clouds for the growth outlook because of the conflict. While the consensus of economists foresaw economic growth in 2022 around 4% at the start of the year, they now only expect 2.8% growth. Other indicators have deteriorated, such as the European Commission's Consumer Confidence Index, which fell to a level not seen since the start of the COVID crisis. So the backdrop is more inflation, but less growth. So that did not prevent the ECB from sticking to its plan to normalize its monetary policy. We can perhaps just recall that at the March Governing Council, the ECB had announced a sharp slowdown of the net asset purchases in Q2 and a possible stop in Q3. At the April Governing Council, no decision was formally taken, but the ECB indicates now that incoming data has reinforced the case of a stop of the net asset purchases in Q3. While the growth outlook has worsened and inflation has continued to surprise on the upside, and thus a dilemma arises, saying that the net asset purchases could stop precisely because of incoming data reveals the refocusing of priorities for the ECB. Price stability is once again at the heart of governors' concern. So why this choice? The reason is simple. Governors are now worried about the possible de-anchoring of inflation expectations. A new paragraph even appeared in the monetary policy statement, and it says, various measures of longer-term inflation expectations derived from financial markets and from expert surveys largely stand at around 2%. Initial signs of above-target revisions in those measures warrant close monitoring. It must be said that the 5-year inflation swap for the Eurozone has recently approached 3.5% and 3% for the 10-year inflation swap. On the subject, Christine Lagarde is clear, the last thing we want to see is a risk of de-anchoring of inflation expectations. Asset purchases should therefore stop in Q3 and precede the first rate hike since 2011. But Christine Lagarde is not yet very explicit on the subject. Moreover, the rate rise guidance has not been modified. It indicates that any adjustment to the key rates will take place sometime after the end of the net asset purchases and that will be gradual. But when she got questions about the pace of the key rate hikes and the relevance of the market pricing at the press conference, Christine Lagarde avoided to answer. Last point about this council, the flexibility of asset purchases and the management of sovereign spreads. The statement now indicates that the ECB stands ready to adjust all these instruments, including flexibility if necessary, to ensure that inflation stabilizes at 2% in the medium term. This is a part of the ECB's communication that remains very unclear because it is not clearly stated what it represents. During the press conference, several journalists questioned Christine Lagarde on the creation of a new instrument, which she denied, but she recalled that the ECB had already proven in the past that it was capable of rapidly design adequate instrument to fight against fragmentation. This is particularly unclear, but the idea to remember is that any unwarranted fragmentation must be avoided, and that the ECB would intervene if the end of net asset purchases or rate hikes cause a widening of sovereign spreads. To sum up, no big decision at this council, but we can feel a growing anxiety about inflation and inflation expectations. And it is really at the June Governing Council, with the new economic projections, that we should know more about the precise timing of the end of the QE policy and the evolution of the rate policy. Thank you for listening and talk to you soon.
All comments and analysis reflect CPR AM views on market conditions and its evolution, according to information known at the time. As a result of the simplified nature of the information contained in this document, that information is necessarily partial and incomplete.